This is a quick review of the A7 IV and the things I liked and a couple of things I did not like about the camera. This is not a detailed review of the camera. If you want a deep dive review of what this camera does, there are a lot of videos already out on YouTube that have done an excellent job in explaining in detail about the features and the functionalities of this camera. These are the things that are important to me when I'm using a new camera or if I'm looking to get a new camera. Talking about the things that are important to me, let's talk about image quality. The A7 IV gives you an image that is super sampled from its 7K sensor, and the result is a very crisp and highly detailed footage that can go head to head with any modern cameras that is out there in the market. Colors that you get out of this new line of Sony cameras is absolutely beautiful, especially the skin tones. It makes me fall in love with filmmaking and photography all over again, and that by itself is really important to me. If a camera is capable of inspiring you, I think that's it. You don't need to worry about the specs anymore. I'll tell you one thing though. When you compare the footage that you get from the A7 IV to the ones that you get from the FX3, the C70 or the Canon EOS R6, I own the EOS R6, the footages from those cameras feel more organic and softer when I compare them to the footages that I get from the A7 IV. Maybe it's because the images are oversampled from the 7K sensor. I don't know. At the end of the day, this is all very subjective, and what is cinematic and what is beautiful is purely based on personal preferences. But one thing is for sure, A7 IV has definitely made me fall in love with the Sony line of cameras even more. It started with the FX3. I was totally blown away when I used the FX3 for the first time. And after using the Sony A7 IV, I am totally in love with Sony cameras. Apart from the standard 24 frames per second, the 30 frames per second, the highest that you can get at 4K with the A7 IV is 60 frames per second, and you can do 120 frames per second at Full HD. But even if you're talking about Full HD, you're still getting a super sampled image, which means it's totally usable at least for YouTube. But one thing you should keep in mind is that when using 60 frames per second at Full HD, there is a 1.5x crop factor. Is it a bummer? Yes, it is. But it's not a deal breaker though. I mean, it doesn't matter to me. I don't know about you. How I look at it is that I can always step back. I mean, if let's say Sony comes up with an update and the crop factor is not an issue tomorrow, will I suddenly become a better filmmaker than I am today? I don't think so. So these things don't matter to me and should not matter to anybody. But what does matter is that how this camera performs in low light situations. Although I love shooting with artificial light, I do shoot a lot with natural light, and I find myself constantly shooting at low light situations, maybe because of how contrasty the image looks when you shoot at low light and how dramatic it can be sometimes. I absolutely love to shoot at low light, and as expected, the A7 IV delivers a very clean image even when I'm using it at high ISO. And to me, anything around 2000 3200, it's already a very high number as far as ISO is concerned. I know these cameras can go up to ridiculously high ISOs. Will I be using them in a real project? I don't think so. This is a truly hybrid camera according to me. Given its price and the features that you get from this camera, I'll put it in the same category as the EOS R6. As I've mentioned before, I've been a Canon user all my life, and I've taken photos with the R6 that I absolutely adore. But if I was given the choice between the EOS R6 and the A7 IV, I will still choose the A7 IV just because of its 33 megapixel sensor. I've only used this camera for photos briefly, and I plan to do a video where I focus only on the photography aspect of this camera. But the images that I got out of its sensor were clean and crisp. And I loved the freedom of cropping in and adjusting my composition, something that I cannot do with the EOS R6. Shall we talk about autofocus? Let's talk about autofocus. As is the norm with every modern camera, the autofocus is fantastic on this camera. There were moments while shooting a project a couple of days ago that I constantly lost autofocus for a particular shot where I was going through objects in the foreground and the subject was behind bars, if you will, and it was losing the focus on the eye constantly. It has tendency to lose focus. I think the autofocus on the Canon cameras are still better than Sony cameras, at least with the A7 IV. I did not have any problems with the FX3. I don't know if the autofocus system is the same as the FX3 or the A7S III, but I did have problems with the autofocus on this camera. But then for talking head videos like this, you can see the autofocus works just fine. I mean, it sticks to my it keeps the focus on my eye, and yeah, I'm absolutely happy with the autofocus, as with every modern cameras, at least Sony and Canon cameras. I don't have experience in using Fujifilm or Panasonic. But yeah, absolutely love the autofocus. It works great. These are all good things about the cameras, right? So what are the things that I did not like about this camera? One thing that I did not like about this camera is the LCD screen. It is awful. Let me put it to you. It is a fully articulating LCD screen, as is the norm with every modern camera. But it's like this LCD screen is from 10 years ago. An example, I was doing a photo shoot early in the morning with another friend of mine, who is a fantastic photographer. And while I was setting up the light and I was doing test shoots to see if the light works for me or not, I looked at I looked at the photos, and there was this weird artifacts in the gradients in the background that made me go into a panic attack almost, because I did not know if the time we rented a studio, I did not know if the settings were wrong, if there is something wrong that I am doing, if the flash is not working properly. It took me some time to figure out, and in the end I understood that the LCD is totally fucked up. Because when I looked at the images on my computer, everything was fine. I mean, I don't know, given the price of this camera, I know it's not a cheap camera for most of us. Why do we have an awful LCD? Why can't we have a proper display like I have on the EOS R6? I don't understand, and I hate it. One more thing that I don't like is, as with the LCD, the EVF on this camera is equally fucked up. I mean, it took me some time when I was using the EVF early on, when I was using the electronic viewfinder early on, I will take a photo and it will take some time before I could take another photo. I mean, if I'm doing something wrong that I can change in settings to get a better result, please let me know. But these are issues that I've not faced with the Canon EOS R6. So in conclusion, I absolutely love this camera. The images and the footages that I got from this camera were fantastic. And I know there are other hybrid cameras in the market, like the R5, the R5C, the R10, the R3, the R7. But those are expensive cameras, and this camera sits at a price point that is comfortable for me. And since I'm looking to get a new camera, I think I'll go with the A7 IV. Please let me know what you think about this camera, if you've used before, and what are your thoughts in general. And thank you for staying with me till the end. If you've watched this video so far, please consider subscribing. Your support gives me the courage to continue to make more videos and talk about the things that I love. You're awesome regardless. Thank you so much. You guys have a great day.